everyone, it's the Tides Changing here, and welcome to part 4 of Let's Build a Mediterranean House. In today's part, we will focus on decorating the courtyard area. Before getting into decorating the courtyard, the first thing that I did was I changed the wood pattern on the doors and windows on the house to be a less warm wood pattern, just because I thought that maybe that would go better, and I think it does look a little bit better, so it's more of a, I guess, ashy brown color now rather than a warm brown color, and I think that that does make it look a bit better because I just felt like the warm browns didn't look quite right. So yeah, that's the first thing that I did in this episode. And I also changed the colors of the shutters on the shuttered windows. And while I'm doing this, I did want to say that I recorded a few tutorials today. So I recorded 5 tutorials, and I did kind of an intro to the constrained floor elevation and fall sheet and split leveling, and then another one on how to put garages on a house with a foundation. I also did the U and L-shaped stairs, vaulted ceilings, and arched ceilings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload one today, and then I'm going to upload one each day until they're all up, just so I don't upload too much to YouTube in one day. So I'll be uploading those in addition to the regular videos that I'm uploading, like my Let's Builds and my Let's Plays. So you'll get 2 videos a day for the next 4 days, and then one of the tutorials on Saturday. And as you can see here, I did delete those modern windows that I had next to the 2-floor window just because I felt they were a bit too modern, and someone else did point that out to me. And here you can see me changing the shutters on the shutter windows to be a blue color, so they're a little more interesting than the brown. And I'm just finishing up with changing the colors on a few of the windows. I also changed the French doors that I put in before to be the ones on the back side of the house next to those 2-floor windows, just because I thought that those looked a lot nicer than the ones I originally put in. So right now I'm just going through and getting rid of all of them and then replacing it with those. And I think that door is from Supernatural, but I just think they're really pretty French doors. And I also forgot to change the color of that door there. And the next thing that I did is I felt like that balcony needed to look like it was more supported. So what I'm doing here is I'm kind of putting in column supports. And this is similar to what I did in my Let's Build an Apartment. So as you can see there, it looks a little bit more supported. And I think that that looks a bit better than just having it looking like it's hanging there. And then you have that shuttered window in between of the supports there. And I'm also putting in this fence from, it's from Showtime, so it's the kind of Mediterranean themed fence, and I really like how that looks in there. And after doing that, I'm just putting in the steps off of the porch, and I'm using the Mediterranean themed steps that came with Showtime, because a lot of Mediterranean stuff actually came with Showtime, so I'm using quite a bit of it in this house. And they have a nice kind of, I guess, reminds me of Aztec pattern on them. You can't really see it from here, but if you get up close, you can see it a little more. So I just thought that they're interesting looking and that they fit into it pretty well. And now I'm just trying to pick out a flooring for the deck. So originally I went with the wood that matched the wood on the stairs, but then I felt like I should use more of a planked wood, so I just put that same pattern on it, and it's a little bit dark, and I don't really like how dark the wood is right now, so I'm lightening it up a bit, as you can see here. I, of course, had to change the colors of the stairs to match it as well, as you can see here. And after doing this, I just had to go up and put that wood pattern on the balcony up there as well. And the next thing that I did was change that wood pattern to actually be more of a, I want to say tile type pattern, just because I didn't like the wood there. Like, I felt like it had to have a tile, since I guess that's more of a Mediterranean thing. So right now I have it as kind of a beigeish colored ceramic looking tile. And now I'm just putting in a terrain paint in the courtyard area. That's originally what I did. And this is just the, I guess you could call it a cobblestone pattern from World Adventures. And I believe it goes with France. But I had that in here originally because I felt like that suited it. And now I'm just erasing it in those spots to put in a little flower garden in there. So right now I'm just putting in a rock to border it, and I originally had these really big rocks in there, and then I ended up just getting rid of them and then putting in the small rocks that I usually use to border the garden, and now I just have to fill it in with dirt, and after that I'm just going to put some plants in. And in here I used, I believe it's called buckthorn bush, and now I'm just putting in some red azaleas in there as well to add a pop of color, and a sunflower. So I thought that would fit in with a Mediterranean house pretty well. And now I'm expanding on that and having it go over to the edge of that. I guess you could call it a support column. And I'm just getting rid of those excess rocks and erasing the cobblestone terrain paint and then putting in the dirt as well to put the plants on top of. And after that, I of course put in some more plants. So I'm putting in that same bush I put in there and a few flowers. I had to put in smaller flowers because I don't like it when plants are visible from inside the building. That's always something that I can't stand and I have to fix if I see it. And I'm also putting in some ivy on that wall there just since I thought that would be really pretty on a Mediterranean house. And after doing that, I am moving on to another little garden underneath of those supports there. So once again, just erasing the terrain paint there and then replacing with dirt as well as putting in a rock border. And then after doing that, I filled in with plants. And I just kind of went and did this in a few more places after that. After doing that, I wanted to put a fountain in that open area right there. So the one I used was this Mediterranean themed courtyard fountain. I believe that was from Showtime as well. And I just feel like that was really perfect with the theme and it just fits in really well. And now I'm adding in a garden over here on this other side. And I'm just doing pretty much the same thing, you know, putting in the rocks, getting rid of the terrain paint. I did want to mention that I started on the house for my next house building video. And like I said in the first episode of this series, I will be doing a craftsman house since so many of you wanted me to do that for this Let's Build series as well. Like it lost by 1 to Mediterranean house, so it was a pretty close call, so I did want to make that style my next house building video. And if you're curious as to what it looks like so far, I did put a few pictures up on my Twitter, so you can feel free to check that out if you want to see it so far. And now what I'm doing here is I'm just putting in a little plant area. And I want to have some small cypress trees right here since I guess that's kind of a Mediterranean style tree. And originally I did put in these really big cypress trees. I didn't realize how big they were. And that just looks a little bit obnoxious. Like it's taller than the house, which looks a little bit ridiculous. So then I replaced it with these small little ones. And I guess they aren't really cypress trees, but they look enough like it. And I think they look cute in there. And I did play around putting a big one in there, but I didn't really like that. So I did get rid of it shortly after this, and then once again I experimented with putting them in there. And really they're too big. they're taller than the house. If they're shorter than the house, they would be fine. And I was kind of trying to see if I can get them both to be as short as they can go, because sometimes the plants are random heights when you go to put them in. But I really didn't like how that looked, so I did get rid of it after a little bit, but I left it up for a bit. Now I'm just moving on to putting a garden in that little corner there and then connecting it to that one I put in earlier. So pretty much did it the same way as I did before, so now I'm just putting in the dirt. So not anything too interesting going on here, and I really like doing commentary of the interior more because there's a lot more interesting things going on. Like with the exterior, a lot of it is you do something and then you kind of repeat it a little bit, so it's not quite as interesting. And there I finally got rid of those big old cypress trees and then put the smaller ones back in, and that just looks so much nicer and so much less cluttered. And I actually got rid of all the gardening that I did before. I felt like it was too cluttered. Like I felt like it would look better if the plants were a bit sparser than I made them originally. And I also didn't want to have the rocks as a border. I decided that I wanted to have that low fencing as a border instead, just so it looked a little bit more cleanly landscaped. And once again, I felt like it was just too cluttered having plants completely filling it. So I redid the plants. I used the same plants that I did, but I just made them a little bit sparser than I did before. Now I'm just going through and putting in the plants not as close together as I did before, making it so you can see a bit of the dirt in between them, once again, so it doesn't look nearly as cluttered. And now I'm just going through and putting in a few different kinds of plants. So now I'm just putting in some flowers in there, once again, further apart. So I had this big red azaleas there, and now I'm just putting in some smaller daisies and a few of the Boston fern plants. Once again, you could still see dirt through there, so it's a bit sparser, and I think that looks a lot nicer, a lot less cluttered, and using the low fencing as a border instead looks a lot cleaner as well. And then I looked at it, and I didn't really like that terrain paint that I used too much, so I'm actually going through and putting in the same floor tile that I used on the decks in there. And I couldn't place the floor in a few places because of the plants hanging over, so I had to move them in order to be able to put the floor tile in, but I do think it looks a bit better with the floor because it matches what's on the porches as well, so it just all looks more together. And I did cut out a bit where I changed the floor tiles just as I kept changing. I spent like 20 minutes real time changing floors, and it was just pretty boring, so I cut out to what I ended the video with. And I'm just going through and changing a few more colors, and this is the final result of this episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you aren't. Thanks for watching, and bye.